Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Joey G. This is Wrestle Talk with Joey G. As you know, this is Raw vs. Nitro Part 3. That's right. I did Part 2 last night, Part 1. Raw vs. Nitro Part 3. Kickoff right where I left off last night. It was the end of 1996 with Raw and Nitro after Piper just put Hogan to sleep at Starrcade 96. The next night on Nitro, that was the thing with WCW. The NWO could come out the next night on Nitro. Piper just beat Hogan at Starrcade, WCW's WrestleMania, that would take place in December every year. Piper put Hogan to sleep, and the next night on Nitro, Hogan comes out still with the WCW, well, the NWO World Title, the gold belt, the big gold belt that WWE just got rid of. And you know, WCW was just, NWO was growing and growing. Buff Bagwell, Scott Norton, and then by February of 96, or February 97, my fault, yeah, we're 97 now. By February 97, Savage wasn't signed back yet. Remember Halloween Havoc 96, he fought Hogan, that's when Piper came to WCW, and Savage left. Nobody's seen him since, but he did sign a deal with WCW, but they were storylining it as Eric Bischoff was saying, the only way you'll get a job, Randy Savage, in WCW is if you join the NWO. And that's when Sting just started with the face paint in the beginning of 97. It was hanging from the rafters. WCW was just so big. I mean, they had their own friggin' pay-per-view that January. Does anybody remember that? Yeah, they had Sold Out, then they had Super Brawl. And Super Brawl 97, I don't know if that was Super Brawl, it might have been Super Brawl 7. Where Savage finally dropped the elbow on Piper and went with the NWO. Anytime Hogan and Savage was together was money. That's the only time I liked Hogan, when he was with Savage. I was kind of disappointed because Randy Savage is one of my favorite wrestlers. I mean, he's not like, I don't love him like I like Shawn Michaels, but he is one of my favorite. But speaking of Shawn Michaels, that year, 97, the kickoff WWE's year, they had the Royal Rumble in a dome, in the Alamo Dome. Shawn Michaels' hometown. That Survivor Series, he lost. Remember, Psycho Sid won the title, the building went nuts. And Shawn was in his hometown, and the Alamo Dome in San Antonio, and he did kind of the same thing. He hit Sid with the camera, then, you know, super kick, 1, 2, 3, HBK's champion again. But the Raws were still just, the NWO was just so strong and powerful, and Ted Turner with all that media glamour, you know, stuff. It just couldn't compare with WCW. WCW was just so far WWF, especially at this part of 1997. From January of 1997 to May of 1997, WWF was just getting blown out. I mean, WrestleMania kind of saved them, and another guy kind of saved them at that time, because remember, Shawn gave up the belt in 97. Remember, he hurt his knee. But the real stories behind it, I'm a Shawn Michaels fan. He's my favorite wrestler. You all know that. It's Joey G's favorite wrestler. Shawn Michaels, I think, it was supposed to be Shawn versus Bret at WrestleMania 13. Remember WrestleMania 12 in 1996, right before Diesel and Razor left? Shawn beat Bret in the Iron Man match. Well, they were supposed to have Shawn versus Bret 2 at WrestleMania, not later that year at Survivor Series at the Screwjob, which I'll get to in a few minutes. But they had WrestleMania, and Shawn didn't perform, so he gave up the title. They had the Fatal 4-Way. It was Bret Hart, Vader. Yeah, who was it? It was Bret, because Sid got it. This is what happened. Sid got the shot the next night on Raw. It was called the Fatal 4-Way. In Your House, Fatal 4-Way, February 96. The title was vacant. It was Bret Hart, Vader, Stone Cold, and The Undertaker for the vacant WWE title. And it was WWF title. And Bret won it. The next night on Raw, Bret lost it to Sid. So that's when Bret started his whine and crybaby shit, which I thought was pretty good. You know, I thought it was a new thing for Bret Hart. Shawn was the face of the company. But there was another guy coming up at that time. Stone Cold Steve Austin. Now, I'll always go on record saying that Shawn Michaels is the one who saved the WWE. Even though when they started winning the ratings, he was already home. But he's the one who put the attitude back in the WWE. And I'm going to get to that in about 1-2 minutes. But the rest of that 97, like spring of 97, it was just WCW, man. It was just running shit. I mean, it was NWO. And I love the NWO. I have a group of my boys that we used to run around and call ourselves the NWO. We used to NWO, we'd get drunk in NWO. Anybody we didn't like. Nobody would say nothing to us. You know what I mean? My boy had an apartment over E Road. You know what I'm saying? We were the NWO for life. And them guys are still my NWO brothers, even though I haven't seen most of them in God knows how long. You know what I mean? But that's how big the NWO was. In the summer of 1997, me and my boys were down Wildwood's Boardwalk, Wildwood, New Jersey's Boardwalk. And there was about 20 of us, and we all had on NWO black and white t-shirts. The summer, August of 1997. That's how big the NWO was. But as I'm getting back to that, there was another guy who kind of had the same kind of colors in WWE that was making it kind of big. And you know who I'm talking about? Stone Cold. Here's a guy who was in WCW for years, Stunning Steve Austin, the pretty boy. Always had a hot chick with him, if you remember. Lady Blossom, Big Tomatoes, blondes. I love the blondes. You all know that. You know what I mean? And then he went on the Medusa, but that was part of the Dangerous Alliance. Paul Heyman, you know what I mean? A genius. And Paul Heyman hated WCW. And that's why you would see ECW on WWE TV, on Raw. If you all remember that, when WCW would be kicking Raw's ass, Raw would have WCW on because Vince and Paul Heyman, I wouldn't say loved each other. They weren't even friends. They were just associates that both hated Ted Turner and Eric Bischoff. But then the summer, by the end of like June, but beginning of the end of spring, beginning of the summer, June of '97, July '97, things you could see started changing around. It was great because you would go to the Canadian crowds on Raw, and it would be pro Bret, everybody would be for Bret, and then you would see like Stone Cold come down, who was getting the biggest pops ever, you know what I mean, in America. But then he would go to Canada and get booed. Like, if anybody remembers July of '97, the Calgary Stampede, it was Bret, Owen the Bulldog, Jim the Anvil, and Brian Pillman, which I haven't mentioned, I don't think, once yet on any of my shows. Brian Pillman, one of my all-time favorite wrestlers of all time. I mean, he's just like Dean Ambrose, but Dean Ambrose is just better. I mean, Brian Pillman, rest in peace, God rest your soul. You're the man. The loose cannon. For real, Brian Pillman. But, you know, that was great, but if you remember, Stone Cold at that time was like, you know, they were gearing him up to be the next big star. I mean, he came down that match, they booed him, and he laughed. He was just great at that. And he wore one of these chains, maybe a little smaller, you know what I mean? But I don't really wear this for the show. This really is not something I wear out a lot. I mean, it's basically for the show. You know what I mean? It's my character, Joey G. But, I mean, WWE was still getting slumped on the ratings with Raw and Nitro. But the pay-per-view rates, WWE always won. The only pay-per-view WCW won was Starrcade 97 when Sting finally fought Hogan. And I'll get to that in a couple minutes as well. But then all of a sudden, in summer of 97, you know, NWO and WCW were still riding high. They were still the #1 wrestling, you know, company in the world at that time. They were still good. You know what I mean? Lex Luger won the title. Remember, like that Monday on Nitro, he won the title. I was in August. Yeah, August of 97. He won the title. But then that Saturday, WCW would do weird things. They would have like pay-per-views on Saturdays when pay-per-views are on Sundays. But they would have that pay-per-view, Road Wild, Hog Wild, it was in the beginning, then Road Wild. And Luger won the belt in Detroit at the Palace of Auburn Hills. He won the title, and then he lost the belt to Hogan, the same person he beat the title for on Nitro that Monday, but Saturday he lost it to Hogan at the pay-per-view. That was so predictable. I remember watching Nitro, and we were all going hype my boy Chris's apartment. We were like, Luger won the belt, even though we were all NWO fans. But a lot of us didn't like Hogan. We liked Hall, Nash, the Wolfpack, Buff, you know what I mean? Big Papa Pump wasn't in it yet. That was in '98. But we all got hype. You know, Luger won the belt. You know, we haven't seen Luger with a world title since the first time he was in WCW, before he even went to WWE. So yeah, that was kind of a big moment. I mean, you see on DVDs, they still play that. But, you know, Nitro was still on top, and the NWO was riding high, but you could see in the WWE, Shawn Michaels' attitude was changing. And Shawn Michaels was the biggest star in the WWE. Also, another thing that happened in WWE, Stone Cold, SummerSlam 97, was when that heel Shawn Michaels came out. Bret Hart spit on him. The SummerSlam in the Meadowlands, August 3rd, 1997. And Bret Hart spit on Shawn, and Shawn went to hit Bret with the chair, and he hit The Undertaker with the chair. And Shawn was the ref. So Shawn had to count to 3, count The Undertaker's shoulders down, 1, 2, 3. Bret was champion. So that kind of was the heel turn for Shawn, which was good for business, best for business, using Triple H's words here. So anyway, that happens, and the Shawn stuff started coming out, the suck-its and this and that, and then you would see Shawn doing this, you know what I mean, and just being that cocky Shawn that I love, just, saying if you don't like me, I don't care, spitting on people, doing the suck-it thing, doing the thing where he's like, acting like, somebody's blowing somebody. He was just doing it great. He was a great heel. And at the same time, Stone Cold got dropped on his head by Owen Hart. God rest your soul, Owen, but he got dropped on his head, and, Shawn was still young, but Stone Cold was, actually older than Shawn, but Stone Cold was the promising star coming up, the 316, the anti-hero. It was in a different time phase than from Hogan to Austin. Like, you went from Hogan, say your prayers, eat your vitamins, do what you're told, to Austin, stunning the boss, cursing on TV, flipping everybody the bird. It was awesome. And that's when WWE really started to take off. And then Shawn Michaels, they finally let Shawn and Hunter, tag up. And it was weird. I remember seeing on Raw, I saw The Undertaker and Mankind. I was like, all right. And I see Shawn and Hunter Hearst Helmsley. And I knew they were friends because from the curtain call when Diesel and Razor left Nash and Hall. But then I was like, damn, what are they putting? Because Shawn was still a face at the time. But then you could tell he cracked The Undertaker in the head in the chair. Then he made that promo where Heartbreak Kid lays down for nobody. And everybody was booing him. And he said, this is what I get. This is what I get after 15 years. And then that was it. And then the DX thing started, and then it took off. I mean, WCW was still doing great. I mean, Fall Brawl that year, 97, they slammed Ric Flair's head into the cage. I thought Flair was dead. I mean, Kurt Hennig joined the NWO. I didn't talk about that. Kurt Hennig walked out on Nitro, joined nobody knew who he was with. He was DDP's partner. DDP was promoting him for a couple months. Kurt Hennig walked out. He joined WCW. WCW had a good year in 97, but that was also the year that Vince McMahon came out and said, good guys versus bad guys, it's kind of, you're pulling the wool over somebody's face. You know what I'm saying? It's just like, yeah, like, come on, tell the truth. You know what I mean? We're living in a society now where there is no good guys, and the people are liking the bad guys. And me, I've always liked the bad guys. Even the bad guys weren't cool. I like the bad guys. I was a Paul Heyman guy before Paul Heyman was cool, for real. I was DX before DX was cool, and that's the bottom line. And I'm not quoting Steve Austin, real rat. But it just went on. Then you remember the Montreal Screwjob, and that was the downfall of WCW. I mean, mainly they still ruled in 1997, and that Montreal Screwjob happened. If I was Eric Bischoff and I already had Bret Hart signed, after he spit it on Vince McMahon on national on pay-per-view. I mean, the whole world knew what happened. You know what I mean? You could see it on the internet. Everybody knew what happened. It was on every website, every magazine. It was even on some news channels. I mean, he spit in Vince's face. He trashed WWE programming. I mean, he did everything. You know what I'm saying? And Eric Bischoff waited to December to put him on TV. You know what I mean? And then they had Sting versus Hogan, and Hogan pinned Sting cleanly, and makes Bret Hart look like an asshole coming down telling Nick Patrick he made a fast count when he made a 1, 2, 3. Hogan beat Sting fair and square in Starrcade 97. You know what I mean? Don't smoke, children. And it kind of made Bret look like an ass. It really did if you look back on it. Bret never fit in WCW. When he got screwed in WWE, he got screwed for life. Because after that, he was never the same. The best he ever did in WCW, he did become champion. But he became champion down in WCW when they were shit. They stunk. This is Raw vs. Nitro Part 3. Tune in tomorrow for Raw vs. Nitro Part 4. This is Joey G, and I'm out. Please watch and subscribe to Joey G. Peace.